Hi, everybody. Good evening. It is Tuesday, the 10th of June, 2025. I'm Nate Eaton coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona, where it's always hot, but it's nice. And it was hot in the courtroom today. A lot of stuff happening in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. In fact, it's wrapping up. We're getting there. Tomorrow at this time, could we have a verdict? It's quite possible. I don't think we will. My bet is still on Thursday. But we'll talk about it all tonight. We'll talk about what happened in court today. It was a busy day. Video, internet, surveillance video was shown, internet searches, and more, and witnesses all over the place. We had four witnesses who were on the stand, including Detective Pillar, and perhaps one of the most surprising moments, but then again, I shouldn't be really surprised, is that Lori Vallow Daybell did not have one question for Detective Hermosillo. He was on the stand for 2 hours this afternoon. He was the lead investigator in Rexburg. He was the case agent. She fought to have him testifying in this trial, did not want him in. He knows this case inside and out, backwards and forward. And we thought finally she might be able to question him. He was on the dark list. She and Chad warned Melanie that he was dark, and she didn't ask him one thing. Kind of a letdown. I was hoping that, she'd have something for him, but she didn't. I think he was surprised. I think we kind of all were surprised. The state did say they have one more witness tomorrow, and that'll be it. And it's going to be about the cell phone casting, the movements, and then will be Nick Balance, the guy with the FBI. He'll be on the stand, and then it goes to the jury. Well, I shouldn't say that. Then it goes to the defense if Lori Vallow has any of her witnesses or her testimony. Anyway, we'll get into all that tonight. Here's what we're going to talk about while you are here with me. Pillar continues the cross-examination of Lori Vallow, questioning him, Detective Pillar. We had a DNA and a GSR, that's gunshot residue expert. Both of them took the stand in short but important testimony today. Hermosillo takes the stand. We saw the storage unit surveillance footage. We saw maps of Alex's movements. We saw internet searches belonging to Alex and Lori around the time that Brandon was shot. We have some winners of our t-shirt contest from newspapers.com. I was just emailed the list of winners as we are right here. So I'm going to read those to you here in just a few minutes. And we have shout outs and, of course, questions. I want to start with a little bit of, I guess, humor, light humor, you could say. When I walked into the courtroom today, one of Tammy Daybell's cousins, Julie, who's come to the court often, had cookies that she made, and she had this phrase on them. If you can read that, it says, while Lori is serving life with her green chili guilt enchiladas, Chad's on death row still talking about a storm that hit more like a drizzle. Please enjoy this cookie that tastes like freedom. I got to tell you, that cookie tasted incredible. I had it after lunch. It was amazing. If that's what freedom tastes like, I want it every day. I mean, I do have freedom every day, but thanks for the cookie. So many of you, I posted that on my Facebook page earlier today, and you were really concerned that maybe a juror saw it. She didn't like pass them out in the courtroom. It was very discreet outside in the lobby waiting area where she gave the cookie. Now, the other thing before we jump in, tonight, we might have some insight as to why that sidebar happened yesterday morning. Do you remember? We were all lit in the courtroom, and then the judge called for a sidebar. Somebody from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office was there in court to discuss something. The judge called everybody up to the bench, and then he asked for everybody to leave in the gallery. We didn't get any more explanation today other than a court document containing the minute entry of yesterday. Well, the judge yesterday morning had to issue an order that Lori Vallow be brought to court by any means necessary, including force. So I'm imagining that she probably said she was sick, was not feeling well, and the judge said, no, you're coming. And that's what the debrief was about. Cannot 100% confirm that. I don't know if we'll ever know all the reasons, but that does seem to follow the pattern that we have seen in this case of Lori saying she's sick and the judge saying we need to proceed. Many of you have said, well, what if she really is like truly on her deathbed? If it were another defendant who gave their attorneys permission to proceed, you could do that. You could make arrangements so that the defendant doesn't show up and the attorneys just take the case, or maybe you could arrange a video call from the jail, something like that. But not as the case here, as Lori is her own attorney. So that's what happened this morning. Here's who was on the stand today. I mentioned Detective Pillar. Vanessa Milkey, she is a DNA expert. Kyle Mueller is a gunshot residue expert, and then Detective Hermosillo. The day began with Ryan Pillar back on the stand. He talked about how he spoke with Lori, continued to cross-examine him about the interview that he had with Brandon in the car after the detective arrived. There was a lot of talk about Melanie. Now, somebody asked me at lunch today, is Lori trying to set it up to blame this all on Melanie in a discreet kind of way? And you know, I guess if you went back and looked at everything she said, she is bringing in Melanie and almost hinting that there was maybe was a financial motive for Melanie to have Brandon dead, not her. She's not saying it for her per se, as far as the way I understand it, but she's bringing up Melanie often, and she did again today. She talked about how was Melanie contacted after her husband was shot at, and Brandon did try to call her and they couldn't get through to her. It went to voicemail. And then Melanie ended up contacting Detective Pillar the next day and having an in-person interview. She brought her child down to the police station, and then she contacted Detective Pillar a few weeks later about a custody dispute with, I imagine, with Brandon over the children. And Detective Pillar said, I cannot help you with that because that's a civil matter and this is criminal. She tried to get in that email that we talked about yesterday or Friday. It was yesterday, with Detective Pillar sending an email to Brandon saying, is there any financial motive that Melanie might have to have you dead? Can you give me some documentation about that? Lori circled back to that today, and here's how that went.
And did she advise you in that interview of some business deals that Brandon was involved in?
The objection's sustained. It's hearsay.
Did you investigate anything that you learned during that interview?
Yes.
Did you investigate anything that Melanie offered to you during that interview?
Can you be more specific about what was offered?
Yeah, sure.
If you're going to offer a hearsay statement, maybe have him review something that you want him to consider, if you have a written copy.
Okay. Maybe a better question is, did you follow up with anything that you learned during that interview with Melanie?
Yes.
And did you talk to her again after that 1 hour long interview?
I did speak with her again, yes.
On the phone or in person?
The next time I had any communication with Melanie was on October 14th. So a few days after our in-person interview.
Okay, and did she contact you?
She did contact me.
And she was coming to you for help?
She was reaching out regarding some custodial issues.
She thought you might be able to help her, is that correct?
She was seeking some advice, yes.
So I have to wonder if the jurors at this point, and today the jurors were quite attentive. They've been attentive every day, many writing down notes, many focused on the screen in front of them when there's evidence being presented. I wonder if they have to wonder if they've put together the pieces like, well, Melanie's his wife. Brandon laid it out pretty clear that they're divorced, but I wonder if they've wondered, where's Melanie? Like, why isn't she charged? Or was she involved in this? It makes you wonder. They do know that Alex is dead. Lori said that in her opening statement. So Alex is no longer alive. And she said he died of natural causes, and Trina objected about her going down that road. They did hear it, though. The jurors did hear that. And we have not heard any references that I can recall to Tylee or JJ. And maybe it's come out once or twice, but not anywhere near the last trial when Tylee was talked about daily, obviously, because she was there when Charles was shot. Lori then started to ask questions about some screenshot messages, and it was kind of unclear. And then the judge called a sidebar and probably said, "You're going down a path you shouldn't go down." And then she pivoted and changed the directions of her questions to the Tesla. And why wasn't the glass that fell out of that window saved and preserved? And why wasn't the Tesla saved and preserved? Here's what she asked.
And what about the Tesla? So what happened to the Tesla that day?
After we processed the Tesla at the scene, we transported it over to the Gilbert Police Department to further inspect indoors. Essentially, it was just one more act that we could take to better review what we had already investigated for the hours that we were outside.
And was it like towed? Do you tow it over?
No, it was, although unorthodox, it was transported by myself and followed by Detective McDermott to the Property and Evidence Building, where we had a technician standing by. Once arrival to the garage at that facility, we further looked into the bullet hole, and we weren't there very long. It was, again, another last review of the damage.
So you drove it over, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it was photographed?
Yes, we photographed the vehicle at the scene. Once at the police department, we have the surveillance cameras, but we didn't photograph it further once at the police department. We had no intention of impounding it at that time.
And it was measured?
No,
The bullet hole and things were measured? All that was done at the scene, but nothing was done at the Gilbert Police Department?
Yes,
And then it wasn't tested for the trajectory while at the Gilbert Police Department?
that's correct.
And it wasn't placed into evidence?
We did not impound the vehicle. The purpose for that was it was the victim's only vehicle at that time, similar to the smartphone that we took temporary custody of. For convenient purposes, it was ultimately turned back over to the owner, in this case, Mr. Boudreau, both the vehicle and the smartphone.
Within a day?
Yes, approximately a day. It was a very brief period of time.
Okay. And having been a case agent hundreds of times, you must have known that if you were ever going to charge someone with this crime, then surely you would need this evidence so the defense could hire their own experts to do testing of the car and the window, right?
The crime of this caliber, and it's not uncommon for cases to develop into something more than what you initially believe, that's part of being human, part of being an investigator. We did not take the vehicle in this case. We did not have a decedent. In other words, we did not have a person who was injured or killed. We had property damage, and we were still very early in our investigation to determine what happened. So, no, we did not maintain custody of that vehicle.
So is it not in your protocol to preserve evidence?
It's in our protocol to preserve evidence.
But not in this case?
In this case, I made the decision not to maintain custody of that Tesla.
So without this evidence available, how would my experts be able to test for trajectory?
We couldn't test for trajectory with what we had. If it was here today, it's possible that you guys could test for trajectory with the advancements in technology. Again, not being somebody who is trained or certified in any type of trajectory training, I don't know how that process would even look, but we simply don't have the vehicle today as we're discussing this.
I thought he handled her very well. Many of you did as well. And we were kind of looking to see if Lori would have that type of tone when questioning Hermosillo, but she didn't have any tone at all because she didn't question him. And many of you raised the point of why didn't they keep the car? Yeah, she's got a good point. I think had there been a fatality, had Brandon been killed, they probably would have held on to that car till this trial happened. But you know, they took the photos and they had what they needed, and he went to say right there that he didn't feel it was necessary to keep it. Lori went on to talk about, could you determine if it was a rifle versus a handgun? And for the neighbors, she really focused on, apparently in one of his reports, Detective Pillar had said that 4 neighbors heard the gunshot, the noise. We saw one of them the other day with the now that was Lori saying that. I haven't seen the report, and he questioned whether it was 4 or it was the one neighbor who testified or that showed her video that you heard the loud noise and the whatever. We've heard from neighbors. But she wanted to know the names of the 4, and he's like, I don't have the names. I mean, this was 5 years ago, and she wanted to hear the other people that heard the gunshot. We already did see the video of the gunshot. And then she was asking about other evidence that was collected at the scene, including a cigarette butt that was found inside the crime scene tape. Here's that exchange.
Is there any other evidence taken to the property evidence building?
I believe there was a cigarette butt. I believe there was multiple photographs. Other physical evidence I do not recall us taking.
You don't recall what?
I don't recall taking other physical evidence from the scene off the top of.
So a cigarette butt?
I believe if a cigarette butt was, it was across the street, and a neighbor thought it was inconsistent with being near his house because he didn't smoke.
Okay. Was DNA taken off of the cigarette butt?
No, I believe we still have it retained in our property evidence building.
So if you would have taken the DNA off the cigarette butt, then you might have a person who was smoking it?
We would
At the
probably
scene?
have a DNA profile of somebody who's walking down the street smoking a cigarette, yes.
So you didn't really think it was connected to this incident
Not from-
necessarily?
No,
Okay. And why was it collected?
because it was within the crime scene tape at this time, and the detective who spoke with the neighbor who provided the information thought it should be collected.
And during the course of your investigation, you never discovered that Brandon Boudreau was a smoker, right?
No.
Or that Alex Cox was a smoker, right?
No, Alex Cox was not a smoker. They kept it just in case, it was related to the scene and to the crime. And he went on to say, Trina went on to say that, well, Trina K, we'll get to that in a minute, how she cross-examined him. Lori wrapped up her questioning by coming back to Melanie. And here is her final question, which Trina objected to and the judge sustained.
So she was seeking help, but you really didn't have any for her, is that correct?
Against relevance.
Sustained.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
She sounds so exasperated. Like, that's all I have. I'm so frustrated, out of breath. I think we've gotten to know Lori's mannerisms by now. We've heard so much from her. It's fascinating to go back to her first trial in Idaho when we hadn't heard from her at all. We didn't know. She sat there every day, writing, taking notes. The public, she hadn't done any interviews. She had never spoken. The only words we had were those few in Hawaii, the no comments. Of course, we'd heard her podcasts and things like that, but nothing since she had been arrested. Well, now Trina got up to do redirect and to kind of clarify some of the stuff that Lori brought up. And Lori was really fixated for part of her questioning on measuring. Was the area measured between the Jeep, where the Jeep was parked, and the Tesla, and what were the measurements and all of that? And here is how Trina asked those questions on redirect.
Asked a lot about the measurements of the Tesla and trajectory. Did Brandon Boudreau stop at the time of the shooting and put down a little ticky-tack marker and say, better note this for later so I can tell the detectives exactly where my vehicle was when I was shot?
No, he did not.
Did Brandon Boudreau get out of his car and go over and mark the exact end of the Jeep so that you would know exactly where that was when he was shot?
No, he did not.
Did he go over and tell the person, whoa, I gotta wait and find out exactly how this rifle barrel is sticking out of the back of your Jeep so that later on, they'll be able to document the height the angle, if it's up, if it's down, if it's a little to the right or left, so that later on they'll be able to do some trajectory?
No,
So none of that happened.
none of that happened.
Were you surprised he didn't do that?
Not at all.
So you did receive information from another neighbor that they saw the Jeep in the approximate same location of where Brandon Boudreaux saw it,
Yes,
parked there idling, running,
yes,
same direction as Brandon gave,
yes,
the same Texas plate as Brandon gave,
yes,
and same dark tint as Brandon said.
yes.
So when you talk about this only being Brandon, that's not accurate, right?
Correct.
Marco said he didn't even know Brandon because he just moved in, right?
Correct.
Lori had made a deal, had said that they were only taking Brandon's word for it. And Trina was saying, hold up, you weren't just taking his word, you talked to all of these other neighbors. Now we had some jury questions, some interesting jury questions. It's fascinating, of course, to hear what the jury asks because it's showing where their line of questioning is. And here were the jury questions after Detective Pillar was on the stand.
In your experience, is it unusual for witnesses to confuse colors or not remember them accurately?
Yes. Do I answer this for you, Your Honor?
I'll let the parties follow up on that if they need to. The next question is, were the attempted phone calls to wife recorded during the in-car interview of Brandon on the day of the shooting? I guess, let's clarify, did you record those phone calls?
To the second question, yes, those calls were recorded.
And were voicemails left explaining the situation?
A voicemail was left requesting a response for a call back, not explaining the situation. That was from Brandon. And then I know I later called and left a message explaining my involvement as a detective who wanted to talk to Melanie Boudreaux at the time. And she later responded, and the interview happened the next day.
Okay, those were the three jury questions. Next witness, by the way, you can watch all of Detective Pillar's testimony on our YouTube. I'm going to combine Fridays. He was on the stand Friday, Monday, and today. We'll combine it all into one clip so you can watch it, unedited and all at once. Next witness was Vanessa Milkey. She's a forensic scientist. She did the DNA testing on the Jeep that was the stuff that was collected. Remember yesterday we had the lady that processed it and admitted it, but she actually didn't do the testing. This is the lady that did the testing. They searched for DNA in many parts of the Jeep, including the seat belt, the handle, the door, different areas. And bottom line, it matched Alex Cox's DNA in multiple places, one in a gazillion, trillion, million, gazillion. I don't know if that's the terminology. It's not. That's his DNA was in the Jeep. I won't play any clips from that one. You can go and watch it. It was a short testimony, but she basically said, yeah, Alex Cox's DNA was in the Jeep. Kyle Mueller was the next detective. He works for the Phoenix Police Department. Was the next witness. He does forensics. He talked about gunshot residue, GSR. It consists of three components: lead, barium, and antimony. Now, he went on to talk about that gunshot residue, I learned this today, I didn't know this, has those three components. Some gunshot residue can have all three. Some can only have two of the three. Some can only have one of the three. Obviously, the stronger the test is if you have all three, the more solid whatever the test can be, the results can be. With two, it's still strong, but not as strong as having the three ingredients. With one, it's still strong. But now if all you have is lead, just one, you could argue, well, maybe it's not gunshot residue. Maybe it's from paint or something. If you've got lead and barium, a little stronger, lead, barium, and antimony, it's much stronger. Gunshot residue can be wiped away. It can blow away. If there's gunshot residue on the back of your window in your car and you use Windex and clean it off, it's gone. It could be gone. Or if you blow on it, it could go away. It does not dissolve though. It does not disintegrate. It will sit there. It doesn't have a half-life. So you shoot out the back of a Jeep close up the Jeep and leave and never clean it, and it sits there, and you test it in 5 years, the GSR is still going to be there. I'm summarizing the testimony that Mr. Mueller gave today. It's fine metallic dust that, as I said, can wash away but doesn't disintegrate on their own. So they used a GSR kit in Rexburg. They collected the gunshot residue in Rexburg and came back, and sure enough, there was gunshot residue inside the Jeep in multiple places. If it was just in one place, that would be strong enough, but it was in a few places. Here's how Lori cross-examined him and tried to create some doubt that maybe this residue wasn't from a gun.
Just a few questions. Mr. Mueller, you had said that a gun may have been discharged in this vehicle. Is that your conclusion?
Yes.
Okay. And just so I understand, because I'm trying to wrap my head around that, the 3 particles altogether, right?
Yes.
Antimony, barium, and lead, all 3 make it actually GSR. Is that correct?
So there's 3 classifications. All 3 of those elements in one particle is considered a characteristic particle, which is considered a GSR particle. But there's also the 2 component and the 1 component particles that I detected are also considered GSR.
Right. And so in your report, you say they're also found from a number of relatively common non-firearm sources. Is that also correct?
It's possible, yes.
And what are the non-firearm sources? Could you tell me some of those?
Sure. For lead, lead used to be prominent in gasoline and paint years ago. Lead can still be used in solder or varying manufacturing facilities. The 2 component particles are less common, but they also can be found in maybe some cosmetics or fireworks. But again, those are less common.
Okay. So would you find an actual GSR where all 3 elements were together in fireworks? Like if a firework went off in the vicinity?
No, ma'am.
You would never find GSR after fireworks?
3 component particle, no.
So you would find either consistent or commonly associated?
It's possible depending on the firework.
Okay. What about from brake dust?
Again, that's possible, yes.
What about from fertilizer?
I'm not familiar with fertilizer having those specific elements.
What about hairspray?
I'm not familiar with hairspray being a component or having those components.
Okay. So of the kits that you took, of the stubs that you had that you actually tested, how many all 3 particles did you find together, grouped together?
So 2, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side on the inside windows.
So just 2?
Correct.
And so if a firearm were to be shot in the back of the Jeep, would you expect to find more than 2 from all the stubs that you analyzed?
It's difficult to determine how many particles are actually there. I'm essentially getting a sample of that area. So the number is not really pertinent to my analysis.
Now, Trina K comes back. By the way, if next time you go buy hairspray, if it has lead, barium, or antimony, you probably don't want to buy it. I don't use hairspray. I use hair gel, but I'm going to call my wife tonight and be like, honey, check out the hairspray. Maybe it does have those elements. I don't know about lead, spraying lead on my hair, on my head. But maybe when I was a kid, it had it, and that's why I'm going bald. I don't know. Trina K got up to kind of clarify not clarify, but follow up with some of the answers and the questions that Lori asked. Here's how she did that.
You were asked about some different things like hairspray and brake dust. Are those things that would create the 3 particle characteristic items that we're talking about that are characteristic of GSR?
No, they would not.
So no matter how much hairspray we use in the car, you're not going to get antimony, barium, and lead stuck together into a particle?
No.
No matter how many fireworks we blow off in the back of this Jeep, we're not going to get the antimony, the barium, and the lead together as a characteristic particle?
No, ma'am.
So is this why it doesn't really matter how many you find? The fact that it's there is what's important?
Correct.
Now, if Alex Cox had taken that Jeep back to Idaho and done a deep, thorough car detail, that they might not have any of that. But gunshot residue, you can't see it. They use super high-powered microscopes to look underneath to see it. And you can't, I mean, I hope there's not gunshot residue in my room, but you say you can't see it, doesn't really feel, and it just kind of goes in the air and settles. That was the end of his testimony. Then we got to Detective Lieutenant Hermosillo from the Rexburg Police Department. He's been hanging out here since Sunday, waiting to testify. As I mentioned, he was the case agent in Idaho. A lot of people today asked me during the break, how come Detective Pillar can sit up there with the prosecutor and then testify? Each case, there is a case agent, and that agent is given exception to the exclusionary rule. The exclusionary rule is that if you are a witness in a case, you cannot attend the proceedings until you have testified. Once you've testified, you can go into the courtroom if you're released from your subpoena. In the very first trial in Idaho, Detective Hermosillo was the case agent in Lori's first trial. It's because he was kind of the guy in charge they went to, and he helps the prosecutor's team, meets with them, debriefs with them. If they have a question, they can consult with them. In the second trial in Idaho, the case agent was Kaya Kamanu, the Madison County. Now he's with Madison County. At the time of the crimes in Idaho, when Tammy Daybell was killed, he was in Fremont County. The case agent in the other Arizona trial was Nate Duncan. That's why he sat every day with Trina Kay. The case agent in this trial is Detective Pillar, Ryan Pillar. That's why he's been able to sit every day with Trina. So that is why he was in there. So you had one case agent in the court today, followed by this case agent, Ray Hermosillo, who testified. And then Nate Duncan also testified in this trial. So we're getting to hear from all these guys that know so much about these cases. He began by sharing his background. He's worked with the Rexburg Police since 2001, he was a street cop. Now he was a detective when he was a newly advanced detective when the case broke in Idaho. Now he's over the detective unit in Rexburg. He talked about the Nissan Rogue that Lori saw, and the Jeep and the tint on the Jeep. Anyway, let me just play a little bit of this clip of when he first laid eyes on the townhome, where what happened was Gilbert police had called Rexburg and said, we have a Jeep that's wanted in connection to a case we're working on. We believe it's in Idaho. Can you go get eyes on it? And if you find it, seize it, get a warrant and seize it. And here's the home of the people of interest that we're looking at. This was early November 2019. Hermosillo goes over to the townhouse complex on Pioneer Road, and this is where Lori had a unit, Alex had a unit, and Melanie had a unit. There were 3 units. 2 of them were right next door to each other. The other was down the way. Here is him talking about that encounter when he first went over to the complex.
When there's no glare, is Miss Vallow going into the residence here?
That is correct. That's Miss Vallow.
And this is unit 175.
Correct.
And then 127 is her going further into it, albeit the glare here, we can't really see that.
Yes, ma'am.
So did you find the Jeep that you were looking for, that 2018 Jeep with the Texas plates when you were there on November 1st?
No, we did not. Not on November 1st.
Did you search the whole complex?
We did.
So did you go back again later to try to locate the Jeep?
Yes, we looked for the Jeep. November 1st was a Friday in 2019. We looked for the Jeep all weekend and were unable to locate it. I was finally able to locate it Monday morning, November 4th.
So did you went back to look again on Monday morning to 565 Pioneer Road and you saw the Jeep?
I was on my way home from the gym and looked over to my right and saw the Jeep parked outside of apartment 175.
What did you do when you saw it?
I had Erickson Tow Company seize the Jeep and tow it to our impound lot.
Is that an internal or external lot?
We have both external and internal, but we towed it and put it inside our impound lot, inside.
Did you let the Gilbert Police Department know you had located and seized that Jeep?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Did you attempt to contact Lori Vallow to let her know you took the Jeep?
We did several times that day. We made attempts to go over and knock on the door to let Miss Vallow know that we had her Jeep in case they wondered if it was stolen or impounded. And we were unable at any time to make contact with Miss Vallow, and nobody had called the police department stating their Jeep was missing either.
So you never received a call from Lori Vallow to report her Jeep stolen?
No.
Never.
Which, to me as a juror, it's those little things that are brought up. Maybe it's not, and I've interviewed jurors in the past, you know, maybe it's not the DNA, the gunshot residue was in the car. It's the fact that they took her Jeep and she never called to report it missing. Who would not call the cops if someone stole your car? A nice Jeep. Like, it's those little things to me that really kind of stick out and are memorable. Like, well, if there's any doubt of, well, maybe it wasn't her Jeep, it had Texas plate, but wait, she never called the cops to report it missing. Ever. So, Colby Ryan was in court, by the way, today. He and Detective Hermosillo have kind of formed a friendship. He came and was there, and Hermosillo came with Colby when he went to the first trial. We also had Brandon Boudreau and his wife were there. He's had family coming and supporting him. Nancy Joe from Hancock from the first trial, who testified, went on a date with Charles the night before he died. She was in court. Kay Woodcock was there. So there have been, you know, supporters of Brandon that have been coming regularly every day. Detective Hermosillo wanted to talk about that when they got a search warrant for the apartments there, they searched them. One was completely empty, like nothing was in it. And it was odd. It was like it was ready to move in for a brand new tenant. The other apartment they went into, and there was furniture, there was food in the fridge, there was stuff on the counters, but they went upstairs, and in the closets, all the hangers were there, but there were no clothes on them. He said it's like somebody grabbed everything off the hangers and took off. And it was odd. And by the way, we talked about that in the last trial, and there's video footage. When I say the last trial, I mean Chad and Lori's trials in Idaho. So if you go to our YouTube channel and want to see the walkthrough of the footage, you can watch it. They didn't admit it into this trial. Then they went into the garage. There were bins, storage bins full of stuff. Alex Cox's clothes, his passport, his credit cards, his identification, stuff that if you're going to take off, you probably need. You wouldn't leave your passport and credit cards, but sure enough, they were there in the garage. And perhaps the most interesting or eye-opening thing, maybe to the jurors at least, was the amount of weapons and ammunition that were inside the garage.
In 147, another case, and 148, and then 149 showing that rifle.
Correct.
What's this?
It's a scope.
Was there anything on any of these rifles that would indicate you could attach a silencer or anything onto the end?
Yes, there were a few rifles that had threaded barrels. In this photograph, you can see the difference. That is a threaded barrel that you could screw a silencer or suppressor on the end of a rifle.
Okay. And so we see sort of some close-up. This seemed to have its own, I guess, to give padding for the person using that.
Correct.
And then showing sort of the scope itself. Was
Yes.
there in that bag ammunition with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there boxes of ammunition?
Yes.
Was there all kinds of ammunition?
There was a lot of ammunition.
Were there extra rifle barrel parts?
Correct.
Were each of those laid out to be photographed, that of the rifles that were located?
Yes.
So we see in 156, is that one of the rifles that was located?
Yes.
157, was that one of the other rifles that was located?
Yes.
158, another rifle that was located?
Yes, ma'am.
And then 159, what do we see here and here? Are those extra parts?
Different uppers for rifles, correct?
Okay. So these could be changed out with the stock.
Yes.
Now, he did say they never found the gun that was used in the shooting of Brandon. They don't know what gun specifically was used. They did find the gun that was used in the shooting of Tammy Daybell, or the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell. And it was one of those, I believe, I'd have to look back. They showed it. Nick Edwards, who works for the Attorney General's office, who served in the military, talked us through the gun in the Idaho trials to say that when Alex Cox, Tammy Daybell parked in a different driveway, he was ready to shoot her, most likely from his spot, but she parked in a different driveway, and so it threw him off and he had to run. And as he was running, it's likely that the pins in that gun got jostled about. So when he got up to shoot her, point blank range from 5 feet away, really close, it just did a paintball noise type noise. So it's very possible that he used that same gun on Brandon, or he was worried that it didn't work for Tammy, so he used a different gun. He had a variety there to choose from. We went on to see the surveillance footage. Now, this is the footage of Self Storage Plus, which was a half mile from Lori's house, that she went on October 1st of 2019 to rent the unit, needed a storage unit. She went by herself the first day. She signed the contract. We saw the contract. She signed it Lori Ryan, which was her name before Vallow. And then she went and checked out the unit, put a few things in it. Remember, Brandon was shot October 2nd. So on October 2nd, Lori goes back with Chad and drops off a significant item. Now, I'm not going to, in court, they can't speed up the video. They have to play it as is. They can't zoom in. They can't do any of that. And it was kind of long because we were watching these clips and it was kind of long, probably 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to show you a report I did a few years ago. My apologies if you've seen it. I've played it here before, but if you're new here, this kind of summarizes in 3 minutes what was happening at that storage unit, who was coming and going. And this is kind of a synopsis of the testimony that Detective Lieutenant Ray Hermosillo gave today with Trina Kay. So let me just play that for you now. Nate Eaton, and we are getting a closer look at surveillance footage from Self Storage Plus in Rexburg. This is the facility where Lori Vallow went on October 1st to rent a storage unit. And inside she placed some very personal belongings, such as children's bikes, scooters, also some photo albums, and blankets with pictures of her children, JJ and Tylee. Lori and sometimes 2 men visited the facility 9 times in October and 1 time in November. The big question is what happened on October 2nd. We know that Lori rented the unit by herself the day before on the 1st, but on October 2nd, she came in her blue Nissan Rogue with a man we originally thought was Alex Cox, her brother. But a closer look of enhanced high-quality video shows it likely was not Alex. In fact, it appears to be Chad Daybell, based on the way he walks, looks, and comparing his mannerisms to other video we have of him. Let me walk you through this. The blue Rogue arrives at 2:25. You can see the timestamp says 1:25, but that's because the clocks were off, according to the facility. Lori is driving the Rogue and makes her way to the door of the building where her unit is. She gets out 2 minutes later at 2:27 with the man we believe is Chad. At 2:29, he pulls a tire out of the back of the Rogue and rolls it into the storage unit. Then 1 minute later, he and Lori both carry in together what appears to be a removable car seat. They put it in the locker, shut the door, and leave the facility at 2:32. Their entire visit is just 7 minutes. So why does this matter? Well, that same day, Brandon Boudreaux says that he was shot at in Gilbert, Arizona around 9:30 that morning while coming home from the gym. Brandon had been married to Melanie Lori's niece, and he had a very large life insurance policy and assets totaling over $1 million. Months earlier, Melanie began spending a lot of time with Lori and her religious group. Then Melanie suddenly demanded a divorce from Brandon. The bullet missed his head by inches, and police say the person who shot at him was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow. Charles had been dead for nearly 3 months at this point, and Tylee Ryan regularly drove that Jeep, but she had been missing for more than a month at this point. Now, if you're familiar with Jeeps, you know that many models have spare tires on the back, and if they are in place, the back window does not open. But if they are removed, that window does open. So it's possible that the Jeep used in that shooting had the tire removed, and that tire could have been placed into the storage unit along with the back seat of the Jeep. We would ask Alex Cox if that was the case, but we can't because he's dead, and police are not commenting. But if Cox was not in Rexburg, it's possible he was in Arizona, inside Charles Vallow's Jeep. The next day, back in Rexburg, Lori returns to the storage facility with another man who we believe is Alex. They were there for 3 minutes. You can see them entering, working their way to the same door she was at the day before, and going into the building. Compared to the guy from the day before, this man walks differently and carries the tire out rather than rolling it. The man we think is Cox also carries out the car seat by himself without any help from Lori. Originally, we thought this was a tote with something hanging over the end, but this higher quality video shows that it appears it's actually a vehicle seat, and Lori and Alex are likely taking it away. 3 days later, on October 6th, Alex returns to the storage unit by himself in his silver pickup and comes 5 other times that month, including a visit on October 28th with a man who appears to be Chad Daybell. They stay 6 minutes and wheel in bikes and other items. The last time anyone visits the storage locker is November 24th. Lori and Chad stay for 4 minutes and drop off this Home Depot box and a tote, leaving belongings of JJ and Tylee never to return. Police have now seized all of the items that were inside of that storage unit, along with the Jeep that was used in the shooting of Brandon. I'm Nate Eaton for EastIdahoNews.com. So that kind of gives you a, not to take away from Detective Lieutenant Hermosillo's testimony, that's, I just wanted to kind of summarize it all into one spot. The jurors saw some of that. The main parts they saw were the tire going in and out and the seat going in and out within 24 hours of each other, the same 24-hour time period that Brandon Boudreaux has been shot at in Arizona. We go on to hear testimony about Alex visiting the shooting range, signing in just days before, using his personalized license plate minus 1 letter rather than his real name when he signed in. He got a track phone from Walmart in Idaho Falls and signed into his Homer J. Maximus account. And they were able to check out what he was searching for. And there was all sorts of searches. There was searches for gun trajectory, searches for gun measurements. He searched for directions to Brandon's home the night before Brandon was shot, the morning that Brandon was shot. He searched for, after the shooting, Moab, Utah, and then Fillmore, Utah. It's as if he was working his way from Arizona back up to Idaho Falls. His final search in the cloud was Idaho Falls Regional Airport. All of that contained in the track phone that he stopped using once he got home to Idaho. He went back to using his other phone. So the question was with all of this, somebody said during the break is, all right, they've proven Alex. Alex, of course, they've got it. If Alex were on the stand, guilty, guilty, guilty. Have they proved that Lori was tied to it? That Lori conspired to do this stuff? This afternoon, that video of her at the unit with Chad and then with Alex, that's pretty firm stuff. Now, had she not gone with them, that might be another story. Also, that Nissan Rogue that was talked about, that it was there at the storage unit, it was there at the house, it was registered to her and Charles, she was connected to that vehicle. There was, well, let me just actually show you a little bit of some of the stuff that Lori, so yeah, that was one thing, one of the big things, and I think this is why they held Hermosillo for the end, is that she took out that seat or helped with the seat. She helped with the tire. And then she did some Google searches herself that were stored in her iCloud, the Lolly Time iCloud, which there was a deep dive on that, days on end, it seemed, in Idaho. It was just kind of a little bit today, but here's what Hermosillo said about that.
On September 30th at 11:14 p.m. UTC, did this Gmail account, Lolly Time Forever, that is tied to Lori Vallow's cell phone number and that she gave to her brother, search how to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler?
Yes, she did.
So if we're talking Idaho time and we go back 6, where are we at for that for time?
So it'd be 5:14
PM.
p.m.
So September 30th, we're talking just a couple days now before the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux.
That's correct.
And do we see, in fact, they visited, or she visited this site, Jeep Wrangler JK Rear Seat Removal How to DIY YouTube video.
Yes.
And that is basically a few seconds after this first search.
Yes, ma'am.
When we were watching those videos from this storage unit, did you see something being brought into the storage unit by Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell on October 2nd that appeared to look like a rear seat?
Yes, I did.
And on October 3rd, when we were viewing those videos from the self-storage unit, did you see Lori Vallow and Alex Cox removing something that appeared to be a rear seat from the storage unit?
Yes.
So there you go. That could be pretty memorable for these jurors. I'll tell you one moment I took note of today. I tried to watch the jurors more this afternoon, is that one of them was looking ahead, and when she said to Hermosillo, when Trina said, what were they wheeling, what were they taking in? He said, a tire. She kind of got a smile on her face, like, and then looked down and wrote. Many of the jurors taking notes. Trina questioned him about 2 hours. And then we were ready when she rested. We were ready to see what Lori had. We were ready to see what Lori was going to bring. She was going to go the rest of the day today and all day tomorrow, whatever. She said, I have no questions, Your Honor. It's just kind of shocking. Kind of the approach she took with Kay Woodcock. She did ask Kay 2 or 3 questions, but nothing at all like the approach she took with her brother. Nothing at all like the approach she took with Detective Pillar. You can watch all of Detective Hermosillo, Lieutenant Hermosillo's. I still call him Detective. He's been promoted, but in my mind, I know him as Detective. You can watch it all on our YouTube channel after tonight. I'm going to go post it on there, his entire testimony. After the jury left, the judge asked where we stand. The prosecutor said, I have one more witness, Nick Balance, the FBI cell phone casting guy. He'll be tomorrow morning. And then she asked the judge if they should have closing arguments ready for tomorrow. The judge said yes. So how could it go? Nick Balance could take the morning. After lunch, we come back. Prosecution rests. This is my speculation. He turns it over to Lori. She says, we rest too. The judge could then say, all right, we're going to go straight into closing arguments. Prosecution go, defense go. That we also have to have jury instruction, which will take about an hour. So we could do all that tomorrow afternoon, and then the jury could return Thursday morning and begin deliberations, or he could do jury instruction tomorrow and then closings on Thursday, and then we have a verdict perhaps Thursday, maybe Friday. I'd love to know your thoughts when you think we're going to have the verdict. So that is the schedule for the next few days. And now it is time to answer your questions and do a couple of shout outs. Before we get to that, let me find it for you. We have another incredible, I have to thank newspapers.com. They're our sponsor, and we have winners. Yesterday, they agreed to give away 10 more t-shirts because it was so popular last time around. Last week, we had so many entries. This week, we had, I think, 5,000 or something. I don't know the exact number, but here are the winners from all over the world. Joni Arcocha from White Rock, New Mexico. Brian Oliver from Star, Idaho. Matt Fairbanks from Santan Valley, Arizona, just down the street. Vera Campos from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Vera, thank you. Nate Feliciano. I did not choose these winners, by the way, just because I like the name. He's from Idaho Falls. Laura Narvid from Clarksville, Tennessee. Helen Weldon from Oakey, Queensland, Australia. I have been to Oakey. William Annabelle from Preston, Idaho. Oliver Fazina from Italy. And Mary Bowerman from Parkton, Maryland. Congratulations to all of you. You're getting a newspapers.com t-shirt. Thanks to our sponsor, newspapers.com, who has done incredible things helping us out. I want to read you another email I got last night that said, my newspaper's story. And where is it? It was a really good one in my, here we go. My father was a prolific writer of letters to the editor to our local paper, and I followed in his footsteps, writing my first letter to the editor while still in middle school. I loved looking through scrapbooks and reading all those old letters. After losing my dad in 2002 and my mother in 2012, it was a way to feel closer to him. Several years ago, my husband and I had a house fire, and it was a total loss, with the fire destroying everything, including those precious scrapbooks. When you experience such a loss, it's almost easier to just not think about the destruction of those priceless memories, or the loss will eat you up inside. A few months ago, after subscribing to newspapers.com for a research project, I realized I could use my account to search for articles related to my father. I cannot properly articulate the joy of reading and rereading the letters that my dear dad wrote to the editor, as well as experiencing the occasional eye roll associated with reading my own letters from so long ago. After broadening the time frame of my search, I was thrilled to discover a picture of my dad from 1965, when he worked for a nonprofit organization in central Louisiana. As I read the caption, I realized that the picture also included my mother, who worked as his secretary for several years. What a treasured image to stumble upon. And it made me realize that even though my parents were gone, that there were still new things I could discover about them, and I don't think I ever felt them closer to me than I did in that moment. I hate to sound like an advertisement for newspapers.com, but I can surely claim that the little surprises you will find as you delve into the past will more than make up for any subscription fee, and the joy of finding that which was lost make newspapers.com one of my favorite searchable archives. Below is an image of my father, Don Kurtz, and my mother, Lynette Aldi, almost 8 years before I was born. This is from Marissa in Louisiana. Here's the photo of her mom and dad before she was even born. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, newspapers.com, thanks to them. They're offering 20% off if you go to newspapers.com/Nate, N-A-T-E. They also have a 7-day trial. You can try it for free. Go on and research and see what type of stuff you'll find. So thank you, newspapers.com. I also want to take a moment to thank you. I've met so many incredible people during this trial in person, from Arizona, from all over the world, including these guys. These are the Pontoon Amigos, they call themselves. They've been friends for years. And you see, they're wearing our shirts. Ain't nobody got crime for that. And then get to the chopper. They flew from Minnesota to be at the trial this week. And they said that one of them found out about the trial when this first started, when the kids first went missing. They saw my reports. They were at a bar one night, and she pulled out a napkin and was like drawing it all out. Like, there's this person and that person and this person. Their friends got sucked into the story. They've been following it ever since. They're frequent commenters on here. Last night, they're staying nearby. They took the TV outside to watch Courtroom Insider. I have a photo of that too. Sorry, I'm going old school and just showing you my phone, but they went out, and Peggy, I thought, sent it to me because it was so good. There's just so many of you all. You're incredible. What do you say we all have a reunion this summer? Should we all get together somewhere in like Idaho, and we'll go to the park and shoot, I don't know where the photo is. Anyway, they had their TV outside in the backyard, and they were watching. Pontoon Amigos, thanks to you. Here's some other pictures. This lady showed up yesterday from Texas with a sign that says Nate Eaton's #1 fan. Who makes a sign for me? Like, you make a sign for Taylor Swift, Madonna. I don't know about Madonna. I don't really like Madonna. Coldplay, something like that. And then this other woman who was also there with our mugshot shirt. So I just have to say, it's great to get photos with you, and thank you all for your support and helping Courtroom Insider be such a success. Now it's time for your questions. There's a lot of them, and your shout outs. Here we go. Sydney Sadlier. I did my own little Courtroom Insider at work today with my coworkers. I start at the beginning, hold clips and everything. Wow, Sydney, that's awesome. Jenny from Connecticut. Chad Mortensen. Chad, I believe, is the only other guy who has come to every trial than me. Like, as far as like public. He was at, and maybe law enforcement. He was at, no, Hermosillo's gone to all of them. He was at the first two in Idaho. He's from Utah. He came to the last one. He came to this one. Chad, I want to shout out your Aunt Patty and Aunt Pooh after Winnie the Pooh. Hi to you guys. Dan Johnson from Minneapolis. Hi to you. Gia, pronounced with a G, like in the word goddess. So Gaia and Gia. Gia from Sweden. Gia, hope I got it right. Kendall from, shout out to your parents, Jenny and Roger, who brought you every night before bed, who watched, I think, every night before bed. Thank you, guys. Jessica and Jerry and Susan, Beth, Robin from Nashville, Amy Smith from Rexburg, and Kiora to Liz and Nita. Yes, I'm familiar with Kiora. Okay, Peggy found me the photos and just messaged me. Here's these guys, these crazy amigos. Not crazy. Yesterday, outside watching Courtroom Insider on a TV. It must have been 1,000 degrees. I don't know how you all did that, but thank you all. Okay, questions. Here we go. One more shout out. Nate, can you give a shout out to the Pot Stirrers? Yes, Catherine, Susie Catherine and Rigby, the Pot Stirrers. They watch every night. They email me and I never write them back. I just wanted to, they followed from the beginning in honor of Heather Daybell. Pot Stirrers, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Here's your questions. After the trial is over, will we ever be able to hear what was said in the sidebar? No, I don't think those are released. That's why they make minute notes. I mean, actually, maybe they are. I'd have to check. Depends on the state. In Idaho, they're not, but maybe here. I'll ask tomorrow. I saw the cookie that Lori's cousin brought to court. This is from Margot. Is that wrap even legal? What if a jury member saw it or the judge? I think the cousin would get in trouble, even though the sentiment on there is pretty cool. It wasn't like she brought them in the courtroom and passed them out to everybody. It was just, she kind of discreetly gave them to a few of us. So none of the jurors saw it. And if the jurors saw it online on my Facebook page, if they're watching, not a good idea. But if you know a juror who will talk to me when the trial's over, please hit them up after the trial and give them my info. Lori asks, when Lori comes up with her own questions, does she come up with her own questions to ask the witnesses, or does her legal counsel help her? I think both. I think mainly it's her. Lori runs her defense, and I'm sure they advise her. No, you might not want to do that, or you might want to do this, but I don't know how much she listens. Is there a receipt for the tint job on that Jeep? Savannah asks. I don't think we saw a receipt, but we saw yes, we did. We saw a text message that the tint owner of the company sent him and said it was $200. I think it was just like a text message. You click on it and pay. I don't think there was like a paper receipt. Julie, I'm not familiar with the procedures of the U.S. attorneys and Arizona courts. Can you explain why her attorneys aren't stepping in to rein her in? Julie, I don't think she'd let them. I'm sure they have given her advice. They are there as advisories. It's like when you have an advisor in your life, a financial advisor per se, who might tell you that you really should do this with your money, but it is your money. You decide. That's how Lori is looking at this. This is her case. She's running it, and her counsel can give her advice, but they are not in charge. Jocelyn, I live right in Phoenix. I'd love to come to court. Can you give me an idea when I should arrive? Well, Jocelyn, if you're going to come to court, you probably should come tomorrow or the next day. I don't know how many more days we're going to have, but some people get there. The court doors open at 7:30. Today, there were plenty of open seats. Yesterday, there weren't. It all depends on the day. The courtroom will open, I think they're starting at 10 tomorrow, 10:15. So it doesn't hurt to be there around 8:30. This morning, I know a lady who was there at like 4, sleeping outside on the ground. She really wanted a seat. So it just depends. Michelle, what do you think? Lori thought about the significance of the glass in the road was about. What do I think about Lori thinking the significance of the glass was a road about? Any idea what she'd asked Detective Pillar what his colleague was wearing? As far as the glass, I think she was just trying to say that the glass could have come from anything, which I guess it could have. As far as asking Pillar what his colleague was wearing, sometimes, you might ask simple questions, and then you might be able to catch the person not telling the truth down the line. Not saying this was pillar at all, but if you ask one witness, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And I tell you, I had eggs and bacon with my wife. And then you ask the wife, the next witness, and she says, we had Fruit Loops. One of us isn't telling the truth. So probably just like that. Or she just really wanted to know what Lori was, or what he really thought about what the colleague was wearing. Danielle asked, when do I think the state will rest? Probably tomorrow, unless something happens. Annie says, is the judge allowed to discuss the case once it's over, or does the possibility of appeals prevent that from happening? You're right. The appeals and most judges just do not talk about their cases. You rarely see a judge on the news. You'll see a retired judge, or you'll see a judge who's no longer practicing. The judge in the Murdoch case in Georgia, I believe, did an interview after he retired about the case, but he didn't really get into the specifics. Some judges won't do it. I've spoken with retired judges, not like on the record, just chatting, and they'll open up about stuff. But I hope so. Some might go on and write a book. I don't know if they're legally bound to not do that. But anyway, I'd love to talk with Judge Boreski, even if it's just an off-the-record lunch over lunch one day. That's what a off-the-record lunch would be. It'd be over lunch. Nate, what date did you go to the storage unit? Teresa's asking. What date did the police notify about it? Do the Woodcocks have the quilts that were in storage unit, or does Colby? The reason I'm asking is it sounds like you knew before the police knew about the storage unit. Is that true? Did you notify the police? The police, from what I understand, were aware of the storage unit early on, or they had the document, but so many things were happening in the case at that time. I had just gotten back from Hawaii, and they're keeping eyes on Lori and Chad, and they're trying to put together this investigation. I don't know the date that they went over. I do know the day that I aired our story and put it on eastidahonews.com, the cops were there within an hour after that story went up. As far as the stuff in the unit, I believe that some were given to the Woodcocks. I don't know where all of it ended up, but it was not destroyed. It was turned over to family members, which is why one of the reasons well, not one of the reasons, but the storage unit owner told me he would not destroy it. And I didn't know him. He saw me in Hawaii and called me, got my cell phone and called me. And yeah, so the guy that owns the storage unit. I took him to lunch a few weeks later and thanked him for the scoop. Did you catch the Dan Moss, the tint guy, said that he was hired on September 23rd. So was that the same day little JJ was taken that they were planning Brandon's shooting? I believe it was the 21st. Yeah, it was around that time. And they were doing everything. They were planning, I'm sure, Tammy's shooting, Brandon's shooting. The children were both dead. They were getting things in motion very quickly. Isn't there a law in Arizona called Hannah Priors? It refers to being able to use someone's prior convictions against them. I don't know what the name of the law is called, but that's 404B that we talked about the other night. Cindy asked, do Lori advisors tell her what she shouldn't ask and should not do? I talked about that one. Does Brandon have full custody of the 4 children, or does Melanie also get them? Carol asked that. They share custody, 50-50. What on earth is the Pink Pony that Lori's talking about with Brandon? Annie asks that. The Pink Pony's a restaurant, a steakhouse that Brandon apparently went to with friends years ago and danced. And there was a video. He was hanging out with the guys, from what I understand. I don't remember if I've seen the video or not, maybe in the early days of that, but it's not, ever since then, that Pink Pony song has come out. It's not connected to that. Nate, can I see Lori's stun bun? Cindy, stun belt. Is she fiddling with it on purpose, trying to show people? I don't think so, Cindy. I think she's trying to cover it up. She had on a baggy suit on Friday to kind of cover it up, but yeah, she doesn't want them to see it. Lisa Roberts asked, do I think the gun used in Brandon's incident is the same one used in Tammy? I talked about that earlier. Could be, or he could have used a different one if he was upset that it didn't fire. Well, wait. Brandon was shot at first. Okay, so yeah, it could have been the same one. Right. Sorry, I had the dates wrong. I was thinking Tammy died first. So yeah, he could have used the same one with Brandon. It worked. It shot. And then he took off, and then he probably took it over to Tammy. So forget what I said earlier about the timeline difference, that the fact that it didn't work with Tammy, so he may not have wanted to use it with Brandon. The times were different, and that it was there first. Nate, I heard the judge is only going to allow one person from the media in the courtroom for the Kohberger trial, and it will be someone from Latah County. Good question. The Kohberger trial seating is a lottery system. every single person that wants to go in the courtroom will need to go on a website the day before at noon and request a ticket. If you get a ticket, you have a seat. The media, as a coalition, filed a motion with the judge asking that we could have one seat reserved for media in case one day came along and the public took all the seats and there was no media reporter in there. East Idaho News signed on to that brief. The judge responded that I can't do that because who's media? Is a TikToker media? Is a blogger? Is a YouTuber? Am I media? Is a news? He said, Idaho law does not define who media is. So what I will do is I will have a seat for the local media where the crime occurred in Latah County. They can rotate through and fill the seat as a pool representative for all the media. It's like when the president travels, there's a pool representative who represents all the media and then they share notes. That's what that means. So I will try to go. I will do Courtroom Insider every night, whether I'm in the courtroom or not. I'll break it all down for you. But yeah, that's kind of where we stand with that. Is Melanie watching this trial? I have no idea. Can Melanie be called to testify? Well, she could, but she hasn't been. She's also a co-conspirator in the case. So I think that could create a conflict if they do press charges against her, which we don't know if they're going to, but Trina has confirmed that she is under investigation. Could I hear what Lori was saying as she was pointing to the judge leaving the courtroom the other day? I could not hear what she said. I was on the other side. Are the jurors allowed to look into what 404A, 404B, and 405 are? Claire asks that. No, they're not supposed to. They might know already, or they might, yeah, they're not supposed to. But it has been brought up a lot. Why is Lori allowed to approach the bench on a sidebar? I thought she had to use headphones, Whitney says. Sometimes I think the judge does that just to efficiency purposes, just to say, all right, it'll be quicker rather than tuning in. And sometimes it's just a really short brief that it's just easier to do. Since Lori is representing herself, if she testifies, who questions her? How does that work? Good question, Dee. If Lori testifies, she will have pre-written the questions that she will give to her advisory counsel who will ask them. She cannot just get up there and pontificate and talk and ramble. She has to answer the questions. If she does testify, Trina Kay can then question her within the scope of what was asked. Then her advisory attorneys can go back on cross-exam, on redirect, and ask her follow-up questions. Nate, do you think there's a chance the appeals will work? Jenny asks. I have no idea. I have no clue. I would probably say no, but I don't know. If they do, we go through this all again. Carolyn, what's the distance that Alex would have had to drive the Jeep to shoot Brandon? Who will get the Jeep when all of this is over? Oh, I don't know. That's a good question on who gets the Jeep. A lot of times with evidence that's not claimed, it is raffled off. They sell it. So maybe Colby gets it? I don't know. That's a good question. It's been in evidence since then. The distance, well, he would have had to drive from Rexburg here, which I've done. I haven't driven from Rexburg. I've done Idaho Falls. It takes me about 13 hours. So 14 hours probably. And on the way home, he went a roundabout way. He went a longer way. Mary says, I know the jurors don't, but do the witnesses know about Lori's previous convictions? Yes. The witnesses, I'm sure, have been following this case because they have been following all the cases because they knew that of this. But if they don't know, they're allowed to look stuff up. They just can't watch this trial or attend this trial. Why is there a biohazard bucket in court? Jess asks. I think that was from the other day when Lori said she was going to throw up. Her attorney put it next to her. You have good eyes. You see things I don't. I haven't noticed that, or it's just blended in with the courtroom. Stephanie says that people are, Lori's family is supplying Lori's clothing for her, and I took it to her. Is that true? Lori's cousin Megan is saying this. No, I have not taken Lori any clothing. I don't know anything about that. And I can't comment further. As far as her family supplying her clothes, I think for the first trial they may have. I know that other people have offered to give her clothes that are not family members in this trial. Is Lori teaching other inmates in jail about her religion? I think Lori's in solitary. Is she in solitary? Yeah, she is. Why is Detective Pillar sitting at the prosecution table? Damon asks. I think I answered that earlier. He's the case agent. Helga says, who was coughing yesterday? If it's Lori, it seems to only be when Trina K is talking. I honestly didn't hear any coughing because I'm in the back of the courtroom. The acoustics are horrible. It could have been Lori, though. A lot of people are saying that Lori was the one coughing. All testing on the bolts to the Jeep. Do you think it will come out if they found anything? Well, we kind of went through that earlier, Trudy. We hear about the testing, but no one said what was found. They did today. Why does it appear that Lori's always leaning to the left? Mitzi asks. She's actually leaning to the right when she's at the podium. It's more this way. And it might be because of her belt, or she's just leaning. You think about it. She probably does not stand that much in jail. She's probably sitting most of the day. She might dance in her cell, but to stand for 30 minutes to an hour, she's probably not used to that. Lori has a change in makeup. It doesn't look like clown makeup anymore. I'm no makeup expert. Her attorneys might be helping her. Has Chad Daybell been charged as a conspirator in either Charles Vallow's or Brandon Boudreaux's case? If not, is it possible? Is that because he's already facing the death penalty in Idaho? He has not been charged in Arizona. The prosecutor said years ago, before the Idaho trial, before he was even sentenced to death, that they felt they did not have enough to charge him. That they felt they did not have enough to get a conviction on Chad. So that's why they're not doing it. They did not close the case, though, so maybe they could. I think at this point they probably wouldn't. Who's there to support Brandon? I think I talked about that earlier. Does Lori ever look toward the victim's family as she enters or leaves? Nope, she does not. At least not that I've seen. If she's made eye contact with Brandon or Kate, perhaps, but I don't think so. Why put the tire in the storage unit? Tara asks. I don't know. Maybe to hide it. Maybe if the cops were to show up at the house and be like, is it here? Rather than put it in the garage, they probably wanted to keep it there. Good question. Don't leave the contract on the printer, though, of where your storage unit is. Who is buying Lori her clothes? We talked about that. Why is the judge warning Lori not to go down the road? Why is the judge doing that? She chose to represent herself. Why is the judge getting involved? Well, the judge it's his courtroom, and I think he probably wants to keep guardrails in place and not turn it into a chaotic free-for-all. And so he kind of gives her warnings, and sometimes she heeds them, sometimes she doesn't. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow morning. Here's where you can follow me. I'll have updates as the trial progresses, maybe concludes. I'm on Facebook. You can follow me there, X, Insta, and YouTube. Please subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. That way you'll get the alert when a verdict is in. My prediction, we'll have to do a prediction tomorrow on my page. You can guess. I'm thinking verdict on Thursday, not tomorrow. But I'll be back tomorrow night. Courtroom Insider. Guess what? Jordan is here in Arizona, and he made it so that my signal was flawless tonight. So thanks to Jordan, who fixed it all. He'll be here through the end of the trial, and maybe one morning we'll go and get donuts and bring you along with us. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.